Sit back and indulge. You know.
Radio Free and Smith episode 214. I'm Job.
그러니까 엄마 아빠가 그거를 해주면 이게 하드렌즈니.
No, shh. Look, I'm sorry.
아니 촬영 같은 거 하다 보면은.
We just don't have that much time, and there's a whole lot of music to get through. Episodes 210 and 212 of this radio, visual, whatever program. We're building up to this. It's the Versailles episode. So if you don't know about Versailles, well, you're gonna find out. But in short, they are one of the best, if not the best, modern power metal band, and they have their roots way back in 2006 with the Versailles Guitarists project entitled the Hizaki Grace Project, which featured the talents of Teru on guitars and then Hizaki also on guitars and writing all the music, hence why it's called the Hizaki Grace Project. In fact, on the sole full-length album, they've even got bass playing from future Versailles bassist Jasmine Yu. So what does this sort of proto-Versailles type stuff sound like?
Let's find out.
Well, I'll tell you what it sounds a whole lot like. It sounds like friggin' Moi de Moi that we covered a couple weeks ago. And there's a very important reason for that. Because it's got Juka on vocals. That's right, the vocals from the first two Moi de Moi albums. So understandably, this has a lot of the same sort of Baroque vampiric stylings as that band. But the important thing that sets it apart is going to be Hizaki's guitar playing and somewhat strange compositional style. You see, my boy Hizaki over here, he's got a lot of technical chops, but he's no like crazy shredder type dude. That's Teru's job. And that's why it makes sense that Teru is in Chris Impelliteri's live backing band when they play shows in Japan and not Hizaki. Hizaki's lead guitar style is much more heavily focused on melodies. In fact, he said it's supposed to like mimic the sound of a human voice and almost replace it. He said that the biggest influence on doing this with his solos actually comes from the band Gargoyle, who we will probably have to cover at some point.
제가 V앱을 너무 안 한다고.
You're right, not this week though. This week's episode isn't about Gargoyle, it's about Versailles. So Versailles got its roots in the Hizaki Grace Project, which in the beginning was very moi de moi sounding, at least to my ears, but with Hizaki's signature lyrical style of lead guitar playing, if that makes sense. But then Hizaki, Teru, and Jasmine Yu all get involved with this sort of weird Visual K supergroup / giant musical theater project called Node of Scherzo that also featured involvement from Asagi, the vocalist for the band D, and more importantly, a guy named Kamijo, who had previously been in the band Lorraine and would eventually become Versailles' vocalist. So what the heck does this stuff sound like?
Let's find out.
Part 2. Nice orchestral intro. Hey, does that sound familiar to you? Anyways, this has definitely got a good deal of stylistic overlap with the Hizaki Grace Project, but there's an increased emphasis on counterpoint between the instruments, and more importantly, it's got Kamijo on vocals. This man is a bit of a vocal titan in the Visual K world, but we'll get to more about him later. There's some cross-instrumental counterpoint, that bass. But whereas the Hizaki Grace Project and its immediate stylistic antecedents, D and Moi de Moi, existed within more of a gothic realm, these guys have a whole lot of power metal, as you can tell by these like layered vocal choirs. Surprisingly, for being such like a major musical event, Node of Scherzo didn't release much music. In fact, they only released that song that we were just playing on CD. But you can tell that the ideas working in this band were a little bit too good just to be sort of like a one-off project. And this is why Hizaki, Teru, and Jasmine Yu grabbed Kamijo and the drummer for Node of Scherzo, Yuki, and said, hey, let's start a power metal band. And that's what they did. So how to describe Versailles Sound? Essentially, these guys are what I wish Rhapsody sounded like. Like, they're super theatrical, but they are also very metal, and they do a really good job of not dropping the power metal component of the symphonic power metal genre. So usually when somebody tells me, hey, check this band out, they play symphonic metal, I'm like, no. I'm not too into Rhapsody. I don't like Therion after the fourth album, and I'm definitely not into friggin' Nightwish. But these guys keep it pretty metal, pretty darn heavy, and very unique. See what I mean? Those guitars are really fucking heavy, and they play off of the keyboards in a way where there's not really like one lead instrument dominating everything. It's very, symphonic. It's like an orchestra. They earn that tag. There's also a really good sense of ebb and flow to this music, where they go in and out of like those super heavy sections into these more pretty gothic, actually, cleaner sections that are usually dominated by Kamijo's clean vocals. Also, Jasmine Yu's bass playing is a standout, very much like within the best of Steve Harris's more lyrical sounding moments on the older Iron Maiden albums. But yeah, back into that heavy ass riff from earlier, those nice harmonized guitars. And then when the clean part comes back, the guitars start doing all these weird, interesting, downright progressive things, messing around with different clean guitar sounds, playing off of like the central vocal melody in ways that are not standard for power metal at all, but are very interesting. But lest you worry that it's all this like proggy stuff, no, they get pretty darn heavy, fast power metal too. Like total Germanic Halloween worship at times, and it's great. I mean, how can you not like this? Listen to these solos like arcing over each other. That's fucking good shit, dude. But again, once the vocals kick in, the guitars and the bass get really weird. They're not doing your sort of standard rhythm guitar accompaniment to a soaring power metal vocal. Instead, they're bouncing off of this like winding vocal melody with their own counter melodies. And honestly, the hyper polished production really helps them out here because it lets you pick out all the weird little contrapuntal details of these like different intertwining melodies. Honestly, in terms of complexity of harmonies, this kills just about every other power metal band. And the songwriting dynamics are absolutely on point too, with those cool little full stops leading into these like blast beated sections. So yeah, on those first two Versailles albums, everything's going pretty great, and this seems to be sort of like a sad pattern for a lot of Visual K bands. Somebody in the band dies. In X Japan, it was Hide. In Malice Miser, it was Kami. And in Versailles, sadly, it was one of the most unique sounding components of the band, Jasmine Yu. So for all three of these bands, this kind of worked out the same way, with the deceased band member becoming an important part of the overall band legend and sort of seen as an eternal member, but it also meant something different. For X Japan, who were sort of like on again, off again, broken up, back together, it kind of just ended that era. For Malice Miser, it resulted in a pretty massive style change. But per Versailles, honestly, partially out of tribute to Jasmine Yu, they actually kept going with that style they had on the first two albums. And it worked out pretty darn well for them. Because as you can hear, on their third and fourth albums, Holy Grail and the self-titled Versailles, they still got the same amazing harmonized guitars and hyper-busy bass lines. And Kamijo still sounds like Kamijo, which means he sounds amazing. He's one of my favorite vocalists in this style. He's very soulful, and his vocal melodies are not just like straight up normal verse-chorus type things. They sort of go all over the place, and like I mentioned earlier, the guitars are always playing off him like that, in really interesting and weird ways, particularly in pre-chorus sections such as this one. Also check out this dank transition into an amazing chorus. You see what I mean? He's got a lot of soul to his voice. I don't know. Usually a lot of power metal vocalists, when they try to get super emotional, especially if they do the really high-pitched ball squeezer vocals, it really falls flat for me. But when you're doing it at this guy's vocal register with his particular inflection, I don't know, man. Something about it really hits me. And as always, the instrumentals are great.
I know what you're like.
Yo, Jub, I was posting on 4chan.org/Mew back in like 2010, and all this weeaboo Japanophile trash kept trying to talk to me about Versailles, and I listened to some of it. It didn't fucking sound like all that stuff you just played.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations!
You have a very good memory, because it doesn't all sound like that. Because Versailles are not just a symphonic epic power metal band, they're also a Japanese Visual K band. And that means they are going to do some wacky experimental stuff. For instance, on the song Thanatos off of the Holy Grail album, they start doing this really weird, very moi de moi-esque industrial metal like stompy thing, but it has these like weird jangly lead guitars going on before it leads into good old-fashioned power metal guitar harmonies. But even with those going on, it still maintains that odd mechanical cadence. And then once the vocals kick in, dude, it turns into this weird power metal take on sort of a Joy Division thing, where you have very ambient guitar, lead melodic bass, and very floaty vocals. Interesting stuff. And this doesn't just start on the two most recent albums. Oh no. Here's the song Amorphous, the power ballad off of their second album, and it avoids a lot of the sappy connotations of that term with its upbeat nature and very folksy instrumentation. I mean, yeah, it does have its more downbeat moments as you would expect, but they're very well done. And then once the music kicks back up, instead of doing a standard monster ballad riff, it takes on this sort of like punkish, bouncy character, even though the guitars are like folky and acoustic. It's really weird, but it works very well for the song. And yeah, it does slide into the super emotional chorus. It is still a ballad, but it's a very strangely done ballad, very unique sounding. Especially once Hizaki's guitars kick in, he starts doing this odd, psychedelic, lyrical stuff. It really does earn its song title of Amorphous, because this song is all over the place in the best way. Check this part out. Really cool solo, not shreddy at all, just pure streams of melody. And behind it is these like weird jangly guitars. A lot of these visual K bands like to do that like jangly guitar stuff. It's almost kind of Smiths-ish. And I find that to be rather interesting in my power metal. And that's why these guys are, at least currently, perhaps my favorite power metal band. So they do those 4 amazing albums, and then they break up.
Nani? I know what you're thinking.
Part 2. That should be the end of the episode. They broke up, but I'm still seeing a whole lot of time left on that little slidey red bar down there. And you're right, because though the band split, it was not like this big acrimonious affair where they're throwing TVs out of hotel windows and choking each other out. No, they still got along. They just kind of wanted to all look into doing some different projects. And in a way, both of the 2 big ones definitely continued the legacy of Versailles. The first of these was literally everybody but Kamijo started up this new band called Jupiter. And if Versailles could be defined as like super weird, unorthodox power metal, Jupiter is the exact opposite of that. I mean, check this out. It's a classic power metal fanfare style intro. You hear these on all kinds of power metal albums. Hell, X Japan did this shit back in the day. On their second album, their major label debut, Blue Blood. See what I mean? It's the power metal fanfare thing. You hear it on Halloween, you hear it on Blind Guardian, all over the place. So that's back in the band, and the rest of the music follows suit by similarly adhering to standard power metal conventions much more closely. Like, this sounds like Halloween. It sounds like really good Halloween. Even the vocalist has like a much more Halloween standard sort of power metal voice than Kamijo's like very gothic, vampiric crooning. I mean, listen to that chorus. That's total Halloween worship, and it's great. They did hit one slight snag when this guy, Zin, left the band after their first 2 albums, but they kept soldiering on.
Fucking metal as fuck, dude.
And their newest album, entitled Zeus, is perhaps their best work yet in terms of paying tribute to 80s power metal. I mean, it starts off all Halloween style with this like super nice lead guitar line, strong lead melody, into the vocals. He sounds exactly like Michael Kiske. This shit sounds so much like what should have been the sequel to Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 2 that it hurts. I mean...
Listen, fuckhead!
Here's Twilight of the Gods off of Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 by Halloween from 1987. How's the song start out? Strong lead-in, intro, solo guitar melody. Good stuff right there. And then it goes all... See what I mean? Dude, this guy and the dude in Jupiter sound pretty goddamn similar. And I, for one, am a fan of it because I enjoy these kind of vocals.
You fucking goddamn fucker!
I mean, you could still tell it's Hizaki and Teru playing guitars. Things are a little bit heavier. The guitar lines are a little bit stranger than what you might hear in Halloween. But overall, this is highly traditional power metal. Very trad.
And we like that.
So everybody in Versailles that formed Jupiter went like full metal. You'd think that this Kamijo character, now that he's doing, you know, a solo project led by a power metal vocalist, you think he's going to go softer than that. But here's the thing about Kamijo. He's a very interesting character. So you see, back in the day, before he was in any bands, he got his start as a roadie for Mana from goddamn Malice, Miser, and Wadimwa. That's right, that guy, with the wacky gothic cooking, and the black metal affectations, and the spooky mannerisms. If you haven't watched the Wadimwa episode from a couple weeks ago, you really should, just to get an idea who this Mana character is. But Kamijo's out there like packing up that guy's gear, you know, winding up the cables, setting up the amps. So already, you know, he's got a pretty heavy background. I mean, Wadimwa borders on black metal quite a lot of the time. But also, if you look at the covers of like his newest singles, you might recognize the art style. That's because they are painted by none other than Ayami Kojima, who is most famous for doing a whole bunch of artwork for Castlevania. And you you can tell even before he managed to secure her services and making his album covers, this dude was big on Castlevania. And so with those two things in mind, the Mana connection and the whole Castlevania thing, yeah, this stuff is actually going to be really heavy and really strange, and I never thought I'd say this about a solo project led by a power metal vocalist, but I might even like this more than Versailles. For starters, it gets really weird. How weird? Well, to look at how weird stuff gets, we're gonna have to go to sort of the history of a song form that exists within Visual K, the really big, heavy, bass guitar-led song. It first shows up as the second song on the fourth Seikimatsu album, entitled Earth Eater. Check this bass line out, dude. This is heavy. In a metal band. That's fucking strange. And this song form did not stop there. Third song on the sixth Gargoyle album, entitled Samurai Dynamite, brings thrash metal into the weird bass-heavy song equation, and it's even heavier. Holy shit, it's heavy. So what is my boy Kamijo gonna do with this concept? Well, he's gonna go even heavier into full-on death metal realms with some of these riffs. It sounds like something of a Heretic Angels album. Speaking of death metal, yeah, my man just growled at you, and then check out how fucking nasty that bass is. But it's Kamijo, dude. He's not gonna growl the whole time. Even if the riffs are death metal, he's gonna do this. His same style of clean vocals, just much more foreboding and menacing sounding. Very interesting to hear him do this kind of stuff, and he does it very well, especially with those death growl gang shouts in the background. Okay, this is what I mean. Kamijo, you wouldn't think this, that the vocalist leaving the band, he was the heavy one. Like, what a fucking plot twist. Even the more like power metal-y sounding Kamijo tracks still have this like nastiness and grit to them. He also goes even more overboard on all the orchestrations, keyboards, and strings and whatnot without sacrificing any heaviness at all. It's pretty fucking amazing. Like, yeah, it has guitar harmonies, but whereas in Versailles they were kind of like wistful, and in Jupiter they were like very optimistic and peppy, in Kamijo they have this like darkness and brooding quality to them, and the rhythm guitar has this like real bite to it. And the same thing happens where like the vocals come in, the guitars get weird, but here they get really aggressive and odd with all the artificial harmonics. Alright, we are now building up to one of the greatest riffs of all time. I'm just gonna let it play, dude. This shit is bonkers. Like, how cool is that? How many parts are in this riff? It just bends and winds all over the place, resolves on these like nasty harmonies. That is good stuff. If you take one thing away from today, take away the fact that Versailles breaking up actually resulted in 3 great bands. Because you had Jupiter, who played awesome power metal. You have Kamijo, who plays this really dark, weird, I don't even know how to classify it, metal. And yes, I said 3, because guess what happened? Versailles got back together. But Jupiter and Kamijo also still kept going with the side bands. There hasn't been much new Versailles material yet. They've mostly been playing concerts. They've actually done like a couple redos of some older Kamijo songs that have been pretty interesting. So I'm looking forward to like the inevitable new Versailles album. I hope it's inevitable. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more from Jupiter and especially Kamijo. Hopefully you are too. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Even if you didn't, thank you so very much for listening anyways. It means a lot that people seem to be interested in what I have to say about metal and music in general. I leave you with that. See you next time around.